Sarah gets paid on Friday. By Sunday night, she has $340 left. She didn't go anywhere special. She didn't buy anything she can point to. She just clicked a few times. Things she needed, things she'd been thinking about, a dress she'd saved for 3 weeks, a skincare set that was finally on sale, a book she'll probably read, a candle that was only $12. Each purchase made complete sense in the moment. Together, they made no sense at all. Now meet David. David also gets paid on Friday. David also has $340 left by Sunday night. David didn't click on anything. He walked into a store for toothpaste and walked out with a jacket, a phone stand, 2 protein bars, and a water bottle he already owns in a different color. He stood in line at the checkout thinking, do I need this jacket? And bought it anyway. Sarah shops online when she's stressed. David shops in person when he's bored. They have never met. They earn similar salaries. They both budget. They both know intellectually that they spend too much. They've both deleted shopping apps before. They've both started fresh on a Monday with a new plan. And they've both been here. $340 left, 3 days after payday. More times than either of them can count. They don't have a spending problem. They have a brain problem. And the difference between those two things is the entire point of this video. If you recognized yourself in either of those two people, good. That recognition is the beginning of something. Because here's what I want to say to you before we go any further. The reason you keep spending money you didn't plan to spend has nothing to do with discipline, nothing to do with how smart you are, nothing to do with how much you care about your finances. You can care deeply, budget carefully, and still find yourself at the checkout, physically or digitally, buying things your rational brain had no intention of buying 30 minutes earlier. That's not weakness. That's neuroscience. Your brain has a system, a very old, very powerful system that was built for survival, not for Sunday afternoon browsing. And that system gets hijacked in modern life in ways nobody warned you about. Today, we're going to follow Sarah and David through that hijacking. We're going to name every mechanism. And at the end, I'm going to give you one reframe. Not a rule, not a restriction, just a shift in how you see what's happening that changes everything. Let's start with what's actually happening in your brain the moment you decide to buy something you didn't plan to. It's Thursday evening. Sarah has had a long week. Her manager moved the deadline up. She skipped lunch twice. She's sitting on her couch, and her body is holding the tension of 5 days that didn't go the way she wanted. She picks up her phone. Not to shop, just to decompress. She opens Instagram. An ad appears for a skincare brand she follows. She taps it. She's just looking. And here is the moment everything begins. The moment Sarah taps that ad, her brain releases dopamine. Not when she buys something, not when the package arrives, right now, in the browsing. This is the part most people get wrong about impulse spending. They think the reward is the product. It isn't. The reward is the search. Neuroscientists call this the wanting system. It's driven by dopamine, the same chemical involved in anticipation, curiosity, and seeking. Your brain releases dopamine not when you get something, but when you might get something. The maybe is more powerful than the yes. This is why scrolling through a shopping app feels good, even when you buy nothing. The browsing itself is the hit. The possibility is what lights up your reward circuitry. And the modern shopping experience was engineered specifically around this mechanism. Infinite scroll, no natural stopping point. The next item, always one swipe away. Variable rewards. Sometimes you find something incredible. Sometimes you don't. Just like a slot machine. That unpredictability is not an accident. It is the product. One-tap purchasing. The moment between wanting and buying compressed to less than a second. No friction, no pause, no moment for your prefrontal cortex to ask, wait, do I actually need this?
Sarah isn't weak. Sarah is a human being with a dopamine system being played like an instrument by people who study it full time. By the time she checks out, she's bought 3 things: the skincare set, a lip liner, a small pouch she didn't know existed 20 minutes ago. She closes the app. The dopamine drops. The relief she was looking for, the decompression from the hard week, isn't there. Not really. There's a brief spike of satisfaction when she hits confirm. Then a flatness. Sometimes a low. Sometimes guilt. The original tension, the hard week, the skipped lunches, the moved deadline, is still exactly where she left it. She just temporarily outsourced her nervous system to a checkout cart. And she'll probably do it again Thursday.
Here's the part that makes the dopamine loop genuinely cruel. The product almost never delivers what the brain promised it would. When Sarah was browsing, her brain was generating a projection, an imagined future where the skincare set makes her feel better, more put together, more in control. That projection felt real. It felt like relief was one click away. But the skincare set arrives on Tuesday. She uses it. It's fine. It doesn't change anything about how she feels at the end of a hard week, because the hard week is still happening. The real problem, the stress, the exhaustion, the feeling of running on empty, was never something a skincare set was capable of solving. But her brain told her it was. And her brain will tell her the same thing next Thursday.
Psychologists call this affective forecasting error. We are consistently wrong about how much future events will change how we feel. We overestimate the emotional impact of things we buy. Every time, without exception. This is not stupidity. It is a documented, consistent, universal feature of human psychology. Sarah knows this intellectually. She's experienced it dozens of times. The purchase that was going to fix the feeling didn't. But the next time she's on that couch on a Thursday night, the brain generates the projection again, and it feels just as real as it did before. This is the loop. Stress or discomfort triggers seeking. Seeking generates dopamine. Dopamine feels like relief approaching. Purchase is made, dopamine drops. Relief doesn't arrive. The original feeling returns. Loop begins again. Sarah isn't stuck in this loop because she hasn't tried hard enough to get out of it. She's stuck because she's never been told what the loop actually is. David's impulse spending doesn't happen on a couch on a Thursday night. It happens on a Saturday afternoon, in person, when he had no intention of buying anything significant. David's trigger isn't stress. It's boredom. And boredom is a more dangerous spending trigger than most people realize because it doesn't feel like a feeling. It just feels like nothing. And the brain hates nothing. Neuroscientists have found that boredom activates the same neural pathways as discomfort and mild anxiety. The brain registers the absence of stimulation as a low-grade threat and immediately begins seeking ways to resolve it. Something new, something interesting, something that produces a response. A store is the perfect environment for a bored brain. New objects, new colors, new textures. Every item is a small potential reward. The brain lights up just moving through the space, scanning, processing, evaluating. David picks up the jacket. He tries it on. It fits well. His brain runs a fast calculation. This is novel. This produces a positive feeling. Acquire it. And that calculation happens in milliseconds, far below the speed of conscious decision-making. By the time David thinks, do I need this jacket? The decision has already been made at a neurological level. The rational question is arriving late to a party that's already in full swing.
This is what researchers call the hot-cold empathy gap. When we're in a neutral state, sitting at home, making a budget, we dramatically underestimate how much our emotional state in the moment will override our rational intentions. David made a budget on Monday. In his calm Monday state, he knew he didn't need a jacket. He had a plan. But standing in that store on Saturday, mildly bored, holding a jacket that fits well under flattering lighting, his Monday plan is a distant memory. He's not thinking about the budget. He's in the hot state. And in the hot state, the brain doesn't consult the spreadsheet. Here is something critical that most personal finance content gets completely wrong. Sarah and David are not failing to exercise willpower. They are operating in environments that were specifically designed to defeat willpower. The shopping app Sarah uses spent millions of dollars on behavioral research to make their platform as dopaminergic as possible. Every feature, the scroll, the images, the one-tap buy, the countdown timer on the sale, was tested against human psychology to find the configuration most likely to produce a purchase. The store David walked into was laid out by a retail psychologist. The lighting was calibrated, the music was chosen. The new arrivals are always at the front because novelty activates the seeking system. The checkout is at the back, so you have to walk past everything twice. These are not conspiracy theories. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry of behavioral design, and it operates on every single person who enters it, regardless of intelligence, income, or intention. Willpower is a finite cognitive resource. It depletes with use. By Saturday afternoon, after a week of decisions, compromises, and demands, David's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for impulse control, is running low. The store's designers knew this. That's why they put the most tempting items near the entrance. Fresh eyes, depleted willpower. You are not fighting your own weakness when you impulse spend. You are fighting a system that has more data on your psychology than you do. And that's not an excuse, it's a diagnosis. Because diagnoses point towards solutions that actually work. Sarah and David both impulse spend roughly $200 a week above what they budgeted. That sounds manageable. It's just $200. Over a month, that's $800. Over a year, it's $9,600. Over 10 years, without even accounting for what that money could have become if invested, it's $96,000. If Sarah invested that $200 a week instead of spending it at an 8% average annual return, in 10 years, she has approximately $152,000. In 20 years, $460,000. The $200 a week that disappears into things she can barely remember buying is not a small habit. It is the difference between financial anxiety at 50 and financial freedom at 50, compressed into Thursday evenings on a couch. David's Saturday jacket isn't a jacket. It's a data point in a pattern that, compounded over decades, costs him the retirement he thinks he's building toward. Neither of them is doing anything dramatically wrong. There's no single catastrophic purchase, no gambling, no obvious waste, just a quiet, consistent leak that never gets named or addressed because it's always framed as a discipline problem. And discipline framing has never once fixed a neuroscience problem. In 2023, global e-commerce companies spent over $14 billion on conversion rate optimization, the science of making you more likely to complete a purchase. That money went toward one thing: understanding the exact psychological state most likely to produce a purchase, and then engineering the digital environment to create and sustain that state. The results of that research are the apps Sarah was using Thursday night. Countdown timers that trigger scarcity. Your brain treats scarcity as urgency. Urgency bypasses deliberate thinking. Saved items that notify you when they drop in price.
perfectly timed to catch you in an evening low moment. Because they know when their users are most emotionally vulnerable. They have the data.
The free returns policy that eliminates the financial risk of buying. The brain hears no consequences, and the last check on impulse purchasing disappears. Reviews with photos of real people, because social proof tells the seeking brain others wanted this and got relief from wanting it. So will you. The abandoned cart reminder email, sent within an hour of you leaving the site, when the wanting is still active, but the willpower hasn't had time to rebuild. Every one of these features is a lever pulled on a specific psychological mechanism. Not one of them is accidental. Not one of them has your long-term financial well-being in mind.
David's store uses the same playbook in physical space.
The new arrivals table by the entrance, the scent pumped through the ventilation system,
The music at a specific tempo shown by research to slow walking pace and increase dwell time. The subtle upsell at checkout when your defenses are fully down and your brain has already committed to buying. You are not losing a battle of willpower. You are being outspent psychologically by a system with infinitely more resources than your Monday morning plan.
I'm not going to give you a 10-step plan to stop impulse spending. Not because plans don't help, but because you've probably already made plans. And plans built on willpower fail the moment you're tired, bored, stressed, or standing under good lighting holding something that fits well. What I'm going to give you instead is one question. Just one. The next time you feel the pull, the urge, the wanting, the reaching for your phone or your wallet, before you do anything, ask yourself this. What am I trying to feel right now? Not should I buy this, not can I afford this, not is this on budget. What am I trying to feel? Am I trying to feel relief from stress? Am I trying to feel excitement and boredom? Am I trying to feel in control of something when everything else feels out of my hands? Am I trying to feel the brief warmth of treating myself after a week that took more than it gave? You don't have to not buy it. You don't have to put the jacket back. You don't have to close the app. Just name the feeling first. Out loud if you can. In your head if you can't. Just pause long enough to name it. Because here's what that pause does. When you name the emotional state driving a behavior, you activate your prefrontal cortex, the rational, deliberate part of your brain, and you interrupt the automatic loop. Not forever, not perfectly, just enough to introduce a moment of choice between the trigger and the action. Psychologists call this affect labeling, and the research on it is striking. Simply naming an emotion in the moment, out loud or internally, measurably reduces the intensity of that emotion and measurably increases the likelihood of a different decision. You don't need a new app. You don't need to delete the old one. You don't need a more detailed budget or a punishment system or a reward chart. You need one question, practiced until it becomes automatic. What am I trying to feel right now? Sarah started asking it. Not every time, not perfectly, but enough that Thursday evenings started to feel different. She'd pick up her phone, feel the pull toward the app, ask the question, and sometimes just sit with the answer for a minute. Sometimes she still bought things, but she bought them consciously, with full knowledge of what she was doing and why. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, she put the phone down and found a different way to give herself the relief she was actually after. David started pausing at the checkout, just for a few seconds, asking the question while the item was in his hand. Sometimes the answer was, I'm just bored and standing here. That was enough. He put it back. Neither of them became perfect. Both of them reduced their impulse spending significantly. Not through discipline, through awareness. because you cannot change a behavior you haven't named yet. And you've been trying to change this one without a name for years. Now you have one.
Sarah and David didn't have a character problem. They had a system problem. A neurological system that evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, being used against them by an industry that's had decades to study it. The loop, trigger, seeking, dopamine, purchase, drop, repeat, isn't a flaw. It's a feature. It kept your ancestors alive by making them search for food, for safety, for connection. It just didn't evolve for a phone in your pocket connected to 10,000 stores open at 3 in the morning. Understanding that doesn't make the loop disappear, but it makes you something you weren't before, a witness to it. And witnesses make different decisions than people who think they're simply out of control. You're not out of control. You're just running old software in a world that was designed to exploit it. Now you know the software. Now you can see it running. That changes everything. If something in this video landed, if you recognized yourself in Sarah or David or both, drop a comment below. Tell me which trigger is yours. Stress, boredom, something else entirely? I read every single one. Next week, we're going into something even deeper. The beliefs about money you formed before you were 10 years old, and how they're still making your financial decisions today without you realizing it. Subscribe so you don't miss it. See you then.